What's the deal? This your boy, Mr. GoodBuds. We back again with the discussion, and I believe we on episode 4, podcast style, baby. And we gonna be talking about autoflowers and photoperiod plants, and the key differences between them, my opinions on them, and which one I feel like is better for beginners. But before we get started, just a quick word from our sponsors, Mars Hydro. Yes, sir. Mars Hydro has everything you need to get you going. They got lights, they got tents, and they even got inline fans to help with that exhaust. We got bar style lights and we got quantum board style lights. Mars Hydro has everything that you need to get you going and have you a successful grow. Everything that they has the perfect amount of power, perfect amount of light penetration to the tent. Everything that you need to get you going, man. I'm telling you, make sure you highlight Mars Hydro. Go on Amazon and you can look at everything that they have, and they have a beautiful store on Amazon. And make sure when you go there, you use the code Mr. GoodBuds, and that's gonna give you a nice discount on everything that you want. Anything that's Mars Hydro, Mr. GoodBuds. Make sure you type that in, man. All right, so let's get into this topic. So what we're gonna be talking about today is autoflowers versus photoperiods, in my opinion on the matter, on the subject. As always, it's all about how I feel most of the time, just from experiences. So we're going to talk about basically photoperiod, and at the end, I'm going to basically tell you how I feel what's best for new growers and what's not. So first, let's talk about what a photoperiod plant is. A photoperiod cannabis plant is a plant that's dependent on the light cycle. So that basically means that this plant, depending on the photoperiod or the light cycle of the sun, is going to change into different stages of his life cycle. So first, it starts off in veg, and that's usually when there's more light than daytime, around 18 hours of light and 6 hours of daytime. And it's different from outside and indoors. But when you get down to 12 hours of light and 12 hours of daytime, that's how we usually induce flowering indoors. And it does gradually change when you're outdoors, from 18.6 to 12. Well, not really. I don't think it ever gets to 12.12. I'm not sure. You had to comment down below on that one. But it gradually changes instead of a instant change like how we flip. That's why we call it the flip. But that's basically with photoperiods, you pretty much got complete control over. And they do have two types. There's two types of substrands of photoperiod plants. They are indicas, which are usually a thicker, denser, fatter, stubby leaves, fan leaves, and head high, sleepy couch type of high. And then you got the sativa dominant, which is usually fluffier area. Usually, it's not always like that. And of course, we got hybrids, but usually a fluffier, usually a mind or a cerebral you get from that sativa. And then we have autoflowers. Now, autoflowers come from what's called the Cannabis ruderalis, which was discovered by a botanist in Russia in 1924, and that was discovered at the mountain sides, the sides of mountains. There were ruderalis plants growing, and what happened with ruderalis plants is that because of the way they grown, they weren't dependent on the light cycle changing to less light to flower. Because they're usually getting less light because when they're against the mountain, it's hard to get direct sunlight. So they adapted and they started flowering no matter what kind of light they get. So no matter if they keep getting a lot of light or less light, which is how we start tricking them a little bit and giving them more light, since it doesn't matter how they flip. And which is why they don't go through much of a veg phase. And the ruderalis, at first people believed them to be a part of the sativa, but in 1924, they decided to, instead of it being a substrain, it's its own strain, its own species of ruderalis, different from indica and sativa. And yes, ruderalis, a lot of people are going to argue, but hear what I'm saying. Ruderalis do have low potency. That's how regular ruderalis plants grow, with low potency. And that all comes from light. Now, of course, we have autoflowers and we have advancements in technology that's allowing people to breed by mixing high ass strain photoperiod plants with low ass potency, ruderalis plants, which give you a decent amount of potency in autoflower. And we are making a lot of advancements and nowadays, which are giving you a lot more. Man, you know what, bro? I said a lot. That's bullshit. This topic is gonna involve that word a lot. I'm gonna have to edit a lot. Yeah, when they breed those plants, that's how they are able to get higher potency. You're not getting that with a ruderalis plant. So that's the origins. So we basically gonna talk about differences between and an autoflower once again is a cross between a ruderalis and another plant. So an autoflower is completely different from a ruderalis. Ruderalis do autoflower, but when we hear autoflower, that's not that's been genetically breeded with other plants to give it more dominant strains, and the only thing that they look for in breeding from the ruderalis is that autoflowering gene. Everything else they pretty much try to get rid of because it's not that great. So next we're gonna get into some differences we're gonna talk about. One difference. First we're gonna start off with seedlings versus cloning. Seedlings and cloning. Autoflowers versus photoperiods. So photoperiods. Let's start. First off, we talk about seeds. So seeds. Pretty much the only key difference in planting the seeds is that autoflowers are they're a lot more sensitive to being transplanted and sensitive pretty much to everything that you do to them. So most people start their autoflower seeds in the final pot that they're going to finish off in, versus starting off a photoperiod plant. You'll start off in a smaller, probably solo cups or a smaller pot, and gradually work your way up. Now the reason that it's recommended to start in a smaller pot and work your way up because it's easy as hell to overwater plants when they're in bigger pots. You can always, I've done it, you can put a photoperiod in the final pot that you're going to finish in. You can do the exact same thing, but it's just the fact that the photoperiod plant is going to be in veg until you decide otherwise. You can pretty much do whatever and abuse it, and it'll heal. You have time to let it heal, which is one major difference between photoperiods. Same thing with the cloning, but one major difference with the cloning, and a lot of people probably going to disagree, but I'm not going to entertain that because it just don't make sense to be trying to clone an autoflower. Now, you breed autoflowers the same way that you could breed a photoperiod by getting seeds feminized. They have male autoflowers and female autoflowers, and you breed them. All of that stuff is exactly the same with autoflowering, except for the times that you're doing it and having to just be at the mercy of it flowering on its own, which ain't really that bad when you're breeding. But you can't clone an autoflower because it's automatically gonna flower. Now, people do be doing it. I'm sure people in the comments gonna comment and be like, yeah, you can. I've done this and I've done that. I'm not doing it. You could do it. Comment down below. Whoever watching this video want to entertain that, y'all can go in the comments and read those comments and have y'all good conversations. But I just don't see the point of cloning an autoflower when you could clone a photoperiod. Like, a lot of stuff you can do, but it just seems unnecessary and more work. I mean, when you got complete control over a photoperiod. A lot of another conversations we were having was in the last Q&A was the perpetual growing thing with the autoflowers versus the photoperiods. Yeah, I'm sure you can do it. You want to do all that timing and stuff, but it's just more work that's just not necessary and you don't have to do. With photoperiod plants, you got complete control over it. You don't have to worry about putting them in a certain amount of weeks afterwards. It's very standard shit. You veg out a plant. When it's done vegging, you take a plant, you put it in flower and put another plant in veg. And at the same amount of time every single time. You're not going to get the exact same flowering time with autoflower. I don't care what you say. You're not going to get the exact same autoflower flowering time from veg to flower when it flowers. When you want to do that, yeah, you could say, well, all you got to do is put it in 6 weeks. But who's to say that plant is going to flower in 6 weeks? You don't know. You hope it will, but you just don't know for real, do you? But yeah, you know what I'm saying? So when it comes to when it comes to seedlings versus cloning, it is easier dealing with photoperiods with the cloning, but seed, getting genetics and clone. Getting seeds and stuff is the same from across autoflowers and photoperiod plants. So next we could talk about vegging. And specifically we're going to talk about veg, and the key difference between an autoflower and a photoperiod plant and veg is that autoflower plants have a predetermined time to veg. It's in their genetics. And a lot of things affect that time too. You have to take care of that autoflower perfectly and make sure it doesn't get any type of stress, or it will flower. Anything that is stressed the autoflower plant out will cause it to flower. If you blow it the wrong way, it'll start flowering. They're very sensitive. We're going to get into that stress factor in the end, but towards the end, but they are more sensitive to how you feed them, the way you water them, everything. And so with an autoflower, you only got a certain amount of time to veg, and you pray you get that entire. I don't want this to sound biased towards autoflower, because let me say this right now. I've had a lot of good autoflower plants. I mean, I don't want this to sound biased, because it's kind of sounding that way just because I prefer photoperiod plants. So I probably should have had somebody should jump in the damn video with me, but ain't nobody gonna jump in with me. But so it's whatever. But I'm not biased. I just feel like autoflowers are for more advanced growers, and I don't feel like I'm an advanced grower. So autoflower is harder for me than photoperiod plants have been for me. So I'm sure there are experts in autoflower, and you can watch a lot of people on YouTube who are experts in the matter. But back to veg. Pray to God that you don't stress the plant out and it goes into veg. That will be a key thing. We gonna get into feeding. This video is kind of gonna be all over the place because there's a lot of things that tie into each other, like feeding. You're gonna be feeding every 30 days the way I do with dry nutrients, or however you do it, liquid nutrients, and their recommended feeding schedule. But as soon as it flowers, you're gonna want to start giving it flower nutrients, which is another thing which is difficult for the veg time with autoflowering plants, is that you got to worry about when it's going to flower. So it's kind of weird feeding it during the veg time. Now it's a little easier once it flowers, because most plants flower in the same amount of time, 8 to 10 weeks. Most of the strains I've grown have been 8 to 10 week strains. So I'm gonna say most, even the autoflower, so they all pretty much flower, and so it gets more regulated during the flower time. But in veg, it's a coin toss. And with photoperiod plants, they veg indefinitely. They will veg. You can keep a photoperiod plant in veg for all eternity. I got bonsai moms in there. Well, it died already, but it had been a veg plant for 2 years, and it only died because I didn't prune it and I let it. I bullshitted it, so I had to get a new one. But they can veg indefinitely, which make it a lot easier when you're dealing with different things like stress, feeding, different things like that, because and deficiencies, because that in veg the plant will heal. Veg time is healing time. That plant, all it does is grow, heal, and get strong. So and flower time is focused. The plant is focused on producing those flowers. So that's the key difference. So you pretty much can do anything to a plant, a photoperiod plant, in veg training, anything. Which is the next subject we're gonna get into, is training. Otherwise, you can pretty much do anything to a photoperiod plant because it allows it time to heal. As long as it has foliage, it will live. Which goes into the next thing, training. The difference between autoflowers and photoperiods. Autoflower plants, they don't take good to stress, like I keep saying. So you want to do low stress training. And when I say low stress training, I don't mean LST, but I'm saying overall with autoflowers, you want to do training that's low stress, which is why most people with LST are low stress train. I keep fucking saying. Which is why most people LST train their autoflower plants, which is basically just bending over gently and then tying it down, because it doesn't hurt the plant, and it's really easy. Now, I have, I've had, I've had accidentally topped autoflowers. It didn't cause any harm. I've had autoflowers that got really bad stress and it didn't cause it to flower. It didn't cause it to flower any sooner. So it all depends on genetics and phenotype as well. All the time, everything depends on phenotype and genetics first, and then second is everything else. But it's just not. It's just not advised that you do any type of stressful training, topping, super cropping, things, mainlining, stuff like that. You not gonna want to do to autoflower. First of all, it's gonna flower. Um, Most of them are just gonna flower off the dribble. So, at that point, you're not even giving. It's not gonna have as much time to heal, and it's gonna try to start producing flower in a stressed out state. Now with photo periods, we already know you can do whatever you want because they're in veg the entire time. So you could top it and then give it a week, it'll bounce back. No matter how stressed out it gets, as long as you take care of it, it'll bounce back. You can mainline it. People be doing crazy stuff, mainlining plants and all type of stuff, making the plant look like a coolant manifold. You can and topping. I mean, I only top my plants because low stress training is a lot of work. So I try to stick to just topping, and I top my photo period plants a million times. Man, they can heal. Again, I really don't want this to sound biased towards autoflowering plants, because I like autoflower. They definitely cool in between grows, and keeping them jars full. And I've had a lot of great autoflowers. Man, the lemon skunk. Oh my god, the lemon skunk was one of my favorite grows, my favorite strains I've grown, and it was autoflower, and it was so good. It was so good, man. I miss it. I'm definitely gonna need to get me a photo period plant of it. And another thing I like about autoflowers is cool to grow those strains, and then you basically get quick testers. And then you know what you like, and then you can go and get you a photo period version of it, like the purple punch. Man, what purple punch? Fire, dog. Now I'm not playing with y'all. That purple punch was really good, and I got photo period plants of it too, so I'm definitely dropping it. That purple punch was good, boy. I'm telling you. So I'm definitely not trying to be biased on. It's just hard. They hard. Next we're gonna talk about flowering, and flowering. Like I said, flowering gets more uniform between autoflower and photo period plants once they flower. It's pretty much the same thing. You're going to go through that time. If you're doing dry nutrients every 30 days, you got about 8 to 11 weeks or 8 to 10 weeks of flower, and they're done. I pretty much increased the light. I keep the light at the same distance, 18 inches from the canopy, and increase the intensity of the light the exact same way I do from autoflowers and photo period plants. I'm hoping that all my autoflowers flipped at the same time. So that's always interesting too. When you're dealing with the light intensity and stuff, because I've had plants that didn't flip and and it started turning the light up intensity, and it caused that plant to flip. So most things are even for autoflower and photo period plants, but that's hoping that they all flip at the same time. So not much to talk about in flowering. Next thing I wanted to get into was feeding and watering. And I just wanted to, and which I already talked about, but I wanted to touch base on the difference was in veg, and not giving that plant too much nutrients. I like to give my plants 2 tablespoons of down to earth 444 every 30 days, and then the day that they flip the flower, when I flip them the flower, which I like to make evenly, hopefully around that 30-day mark, so that I give them dry nutrients of 2 tablespoons of 4A for a flower. Now with the autoflowering plants, the day of that I notice pistils, and I give them food. So that's what I do with the feeding. Now the thing that you just want to be mindful of is that autoflowers are more sensitive to certain nutrients that they need. So if they need nitrogen more, or they need phosphorus more, or they need less potassium and stuff like that, they are a lot more sensitive to it. You can nutrient burn autoflowers very easily, and that will cause them to flip in the flower. So that's the very key difference there, is that you do have to be a lot more gentle and a lot more in tune, I guess, a lot more in tune with feeding that autoflower so that you're not stressing it out, burning it, make sure it's still getting enough nutrients. Whereas photoperiod plants, they'll get over it. So if you nuke burn them, they'll get over it. Just stop giving them nutrients and they'll get over it. If you don't give them enough, give them more. They'll get over it. If they have a deficiency, if they need it, or they have a toxicity and they don't need it, stop giving it to them. They'll get over it. And the same thing with watering. And differences between the autoflower and photoperiod is very easy to underwater or overwater. Period. Not an autoflower versus photoperiod difference between being easy to overwater and underwater. All these plants are easy to do one or the other, but the difference is when you over or underwater an autoflower plant, it can cause it to flip into flower, and that'll be the key difference. If you under or overwater a photoperiod plant, it'll get over it. Which is, the next thing I talked about was stress, which I pretty much talked about the entire time. I mentioned a lot about deficiencies, but one thing I didn't mention was the environment. So we can talk about environmental stress, which I'll touch on. And when it comes to environmental stress, same thing. The environment is very key to the survival and the growth and the thriving of these plants. And if you have environmental factors that stress that plant out, it can cause it to flower. So if you have light leaks, things like that can cause it to flower. I've had heat problems a lot being in the attic up here. And I have, with the purple punch, all of them flowered because it was hot. That environmental stress of being too hot, it caused all the purple punch plants. Jeez, that was a tongueful. All the purple punch plants flowered at the same time. And I don't think it was genetics. I think it was the heat stress. And same thing if it gets too cold, if you don't have good exhaust, too much CO2, everything about your environment can cause an autoflower to flower, whereas the photoperiod plant won't flower, and it can cause that plant problem once you notice and pinpoint what's going on, and that it's an environmental problem where you can fix it, and that plant will recover and remain in veg. And that's just the big thing about the entire world to everything I'm saying, is that you want the plant to be in good health before it flowers, because you guys are going to see having a deficiency during flower in my series right now in the Breeders Booth and the Photo Booth season 4. Having a deficiency in flower versus having it in veg is a big difference, and these are photoperiod plants we're dealing with in my series. Those two things are a big difference, because that plant won't really recover too well in flower like it will in veg. And the last thing I'll touch on is indoor versus outdoor. Now, a lot of people are going to ask too, can you have autoflowers outdoors? And a lot of people know this, but of course, yes, you can. During the same season, those plants just finished earlier than plants will finish. And depending on when you put them out, when you're doing outdoor autoflower plants, it's always best to start when you have the most light. The thing that we like to do with autoflowers, that's different from the Ruderellus plant and where its origin, where it started off, is that we can make sure that autoflower has as much light to do the most photosynthesis that it can. They still do photosynthesis. But it's just not reliant. It's just not a photoperiod plant relying on the sun to flower. Photosynthesis is still required to put on flower, to feed itself, to drink water, taking up nutrients, feed itself. Same thing. All that stuff is still required. All requires photosynthesis, and the more light that plant gets, the more photosynthesis is able to do. Or I guess I don't know how to say that. Photosynthesis is able to do or create or whatever it's doing inside itself, and that's what's happening. But so it's always best to put the autoflower out early as possible when you're able to put it out when the season starts. And those plants will finish early. And a lot of people do all autoflower plants outside, and they do grow very well. They put on tons of weight. And when it comes to autoflowers and growing them outside, and any plant growing outside, photoperiod, anything, you always want to look at the breeder's recommendation for that flower time and when it finishes. And I always feel like having even an autoflower outside is going to be more natural and easier on that plant than it is inside and trying to play God and control the environment, because it's natural outside. And I feel like outdoors you're going to get a more natural, more healthy autoflower plant than you will indoors. And after doing my own first run outdoors, I have a whole new light on how I feel about indoor and outdoor growing. Of course, I still love my indoor 365 days a year growing. But I did really enjoy that outdoor, and I would definitely love to try growing some autoflowers outside. I didn't this year, but I definitely would be interested in it. It would definitely be cool. And to close out this video, what's best for beginners? I already said it. I feel like photoperiod plants are best for beginners because it's easier to control, and you have complete say-so in what's going on in your garden. As opposed to getting into autoflowers as a beginner and worrying about stressing that plant out, like all those things, I feel like for a beginner are things that you're gonna need to get a finger on and not have to be at the mercy of the plant. You want the plant to be at your mercy, and you don't want to be at the mercy of the plant. And autoflowers, especially for a beginner, I feel like they're going to be at the mercy of the plant. And for a beginner, that can get hectic. A plant getting stressed out because you gave it an extra half a teaspoon of food, and you're not gonna be able to figure out why the fuck its tips burning. Now it's flowering and it's turning yellow, and you pulling your fucking hair out, and it could be a nightmare. Versus the photoperiod, you got complete control. You can figure out what's wrong, and you don't have to worry about that plant jumping in the flower on you. And once you're happy, and once you're comfortable, and once you're satisfied as a beginner grower, then you flip. No. That's it, man. We're going to go ahead and close out, man. Appreciate y'all for joining me on the discussion. Once again, it's your boy, Mr. GoodBuds. Make sure y'all go holler at wherever you get your podcast. Wherever you watch your podcast, you go holler at me. Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Pandora, wherever you want to holler at me, man. Holler at me. Make sure y'all like this video, y'all comment down below, and y'all subscribe. And my name is Mr. GoodBuds, and we out.